Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am back. We are live this Tuesday here on the Kev Baker Show on Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. So I took a little day off yesterday. I'm on new medication, and although it is working, some days I get a little bit more coffee, a little bit more chesty than others. Nothing at all to worry about, but let's face it, folks, there could be nothing worse, right, than any radio host turning up to do a show, spoken word show where we get into all the things we get into here, and you hear me coughing and spluttering intermittently throughout that. So that's why last night I decided, I won't put listeners through that. I'll take a nice night off, catch up on some TV, chill out, relax, and I tell you what, in the space of 24 hours, so much news has built up for us to get into here. And I say us because it's not just me here today. I have got Scotty Lopez. And we were close to coming on air yesterday. We were close. I kind of got speaking to Scott on Facebook. And because I'm so addicted to coming on here and speaking to all of you great people out there, there was almost, what do you think, Scott, maybe 10 seconds where we were thinking about it. But then we decided, nah, definitely not good radio when I'm sitting coughing my guts up.
Exactly. Yes. And so yes, people, you can thank me for Kev Baker's absence yesterday because I convinced him to just take a day off and relax. Sometimes you have to do that, man. And we have a problem of being a little obsessed in our line of our field of research. I guess you could say
compulsive obsessive researching truthing disorder.
Yeah, exactly.
Something
and so
like
when
that.
When it comes to putting the information out and doing radio shows, we tend to go overboard sometimes.
Overindulge, Mr. Scott. Overindulge, yeah. But I tell you what, man, we've got so much to get into today. And I was half winding you up yesterday with some of this stuff. And I know for a fact this really, really is getting at you. And that is the fact that the mainstream media, they are in absolute catatonic meltdown right now, Scott. They've spent years, literally, trying to convince people that Donald Trump has been working out of the Kremlin. And of course, now we've had the Mueller report and #no collusion. But it was you that said to me first off, straight off the bat, how the mainstream media in your country in particular, they're in meltdown. So what's the latest, Scott? What are they saying now?
I absolutely love it. This is one of my guilty pleasures. Yes, this is one of my guilty pleasures. And, I don't subscribe to the whole, left-right paradigm, but I do like to dip my toe in every once in a while. And, like I said, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. So, you can imagine my delight when the Mueller report came out and surprise, no collusion, and watching the leftist media just go into a complete epileptic catatonic meltdown. I mean, it was something to behold. And it's crazy how they were trying to push this narrative for 2 years, collusion. And it was all nothing, there was absolutely nothing to it. And now it's like they have nothing left. What are they going to do now? They've wasted all this time pushing this. And now what is there for them to even like run on, say for 2020, the 2020 elections? What's their platform going to be? Because their entire platform was nothing but Orange Man bad, Orange Man Russian, And
I've still seen some like Twitter feeds, Scott, that are really kind of, they're doubling down almost. It's as if they're living in some kind of wonderland where no collusion means there's still collusion. We want to examine the report word for word, and you're thinking, but it's all kind of come home now. Everything, the dust is settled, and we're being told there was no collusion. 500 odd people dragged in to give statements. Nothing. not an app, nothing. Exactly what we knew from the start anyway, Scott. And yet these people are so deluded. They're in some, like I say, it's like some kind of wonderland where up is down and down is up, and no collusion equals Russian agent.
Yeah, I mean, and this whole thing, this whole lie that they tried to, perpetuate on the American public, well, in the world in general, it had global repercussions as well. I mean, look at the demonization of Russia that took place because of this. You know what I mean?
You could even make a case, Scott, for all of the demonization before that almost being a precursor, almost getting people in the mindset that Russia do get involved in anything. They do try to hack things. They do try to influence things. And then all of it culminating in this big nothing burger of hashtag no collusion. Putin must be sitting laughing somewhere right now. He must be shaking his head going, these lot are crazy, man.
Exactly. And I mean, look, it even whipped up, this anti-Russian frenzy in the UK. Remember with even the Novichok. Yeah. And that whole thing. Yeah. So there was this whole thing of, the demonization of Russia and that Trump is probably a Russian agent and he was colluding with them. That's just been going on, and it's over now. It's over.
We hope.
There was no Russian collusion. Then they're going to still try to find things to, investigate or whatever, but they've pretty much proven themselves to be a joke. Nobody's going to take them seriously anymore. And especially the media, any shred of slight credibility that they did have is completely shredded and gutted now. I mean, they wasted everybody's time pushing this thing and perpetuating it. And for what, all because they were so upset and trolled and triggered that they lost. That they lost and they could not let it go, and that they were willing to go to any means necessary to try and remove a sitting president just because of their vehement hatred of him.
And then at the same
it's
time,
absolutely crazy.
Same time as that, Scott, right? It's almost like universal karma. We'll call it that. The same week as all this is going on, you've got that lawyer, Michael Avenatti, him that represented Stormy Daniels, him that was famous for saying Donald Trump would be in jail and by this time he'd be indicted or impeached, and really outspoken character. And now he is the centre of a lawsuit, and it's alleged, here it says he's arrested for alleged 20 million extortion scheme against Nike, embezzling clients' money and defrauding the bank. It's as if everything that could go wrong for the left this week is going wrong.
Yes, and I love it. I'm absolutely reveling in this. Like I said, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. So,
and for anyone out there who hasn't heard us before, I take pokes at both sides. I hate all politicians. Scott has a real passion for hating on the left, though, and I get it, dude. Especially this current kind of left climate that we're in just now. Like I say, it's a wonderland. In fact, it's really not right to call them the left, because that's an offence to anyone that was in the left in the past. That they're in the new left, the wonderland left, Scott.
Exactly. Yeah, we do need to make that distinction, because look, when Bush 1 was not Bush 1, but when Bush 2 was in office, I was really talking crap on him and the neocons and all that stuff, and that's what got me involved in activism to begin with, was anti-war activism against the Iraq war. So, like I said, I don't play both sides, but in this current state, in this current situation that we're in right now, people who identify themselves as quote unquote the left, or whatever you want to call them, they pose a much more they're much more dangerous, I would say, than the right is right now, within that paradigm. Yes, I have my issues with those on the right. Like, I don't like the fact that Trump is surrounded by a bunch of neocons like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and all of that, And
I mean, John Bolton's like he's like the Lord of War, man. If you were making a movie about him, he is. He just loves wars, and that's one sign, one warning sign that should be there for any Trump lover out there. And again, if you love Trump, that's cool. That's nothing to do with me. But look at the people, like Scott's saying here. Even if he's the best thing since sliced bread, the people around him are the same cats that have taken us into many wars before, Scott.
Exactly, and we played that clip on the Sunday show of Wesley Clark talking about the Wolfowitz Doctrine and the 7 countries that they plan on taking down, and that agenda is still on the table, and those same people that are pushing that, are within the administration. So it's definitely something to be concerned about and something that people need to be watching. And, just because you like Trump and you're on the Trump train, don't mean you have to blindly follow every single thing and agree with every single thing. That's a very dangerous thing. You got to hold the administration's feet to the fire too. You know what I mean? So, but no, I mean, as far as like when it comes to what he's doing economically and domestically and all that stuff, I love it. Yeah, and I love the
and then there's what he's doing with Israel and recognizing the Golan Heights as belonging to Israel. This is the side of him where I just sit and shake my head because, like you say, Scott, he does do some good work, and because I've got no kind of dog in this fight, I don't care if he's good or bad. I can see the bits where he does good, and I can see the bits where he goes wrong. And this thing with Israel and what it could kick off in the Middle East, which is already a tinderbox, Scott, it's absolute craziness, man.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And he is definitely very, 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 very cozy with Israel. Very tight with
never had
Netanyahu.
So. Yeah, he's never had that fact. It's not as if this is something new. He's always been a staunch supporter of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so, a lot of his supporters already know that, and they're already in that camp to begin with. So, it is what it is. But I did hear something the other day that was kind of disturbing, I thought. And it was Mike Pompeo. He's with the CIA director, right? And he was speaking at AIPAC. And I think you're familiar with what AIPAC is, right?
Yeah.
And so he was speaking up there, and he went off on this little thing where basically, well, in the end, he stated that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That's exactly what he said to conclude his little thing. So he was talking about how basically if you question Zionist policies, that makes you an anti-Semite. And they were really reiterating that point at AIPAC. I just thought that was very interesting because we, at least I do and you do, and, those of us who do this sort of line, radio or whatever, we like to always make that distinction, right?
Oh,
just because you don't agree with the Zionist sort of mindset, because Zionism is what would you consider it, more like a political sort of ideology, as opposed to
a religious one. Definite.
Yes. So we always make that distinction that just because you disagree or you don't agree with Zionist policies, it doesn't make you a Jew hater, right? It doesn't mean you hate Jews. And
it would be as ridiculous as saying any crime that the UK government is guilty of, I'm guilty of it too, just by fact of being British. And Scott, he's guilty of any crime that the American government does, just because he's American. It's along that kind of lines, and I'm glad we do differentiate, Scott, because there's some shows out there that they just throw every single Jew into the same basket, and it just gets ridiculous. You're thinking to yourself, why? Why are you going down this road? And it's it's a popular road for people to go down, and I don't get it, dude.
Exactly. And so that's what made this whole thing disturbing. And so now they're trying to say that even if you question Zionism, that there's no distinction between that and being an anti-Semite. And if you remember, wasn't that the reason why Australia banned David Icke? Didn't they say he was an anti-Semite?
That's
really what he does is he questions.
That's one of the problems he faces.
Zionist policies.
Yeah, and to be fair, not actually as much as you would think, Scott. Like I say, I keep going back to that 4-hour talk. And because there are some aspects of the agendas at play today that they are definitely a part of, yeah, they come up. And when he was speaking in Glasgow here, we only got informed of the location 24 hours beforehand. It was really dodgy. I'm thinking, here I am 24 hours before the gig, don't know where I'm going, anything like that. Get to the hotel, lovely big hotel in the centre of town, and I'm looking at the kind of announcement board, and there's nothing mentioning David Icke. There's something about metaphysics, and I'm thinking, well, that sounds along the similar lines. And one of the porters, he must have seen my confusion, and he goes, "You looking for David Icke, mate?" I'm like, yeah. He's like, "It's up the stairs." I had to put it under metaphysics because seemingly there's protesters want to shut down where he talks. And he explained how that's the exact reason you had to wait 24 hours beforehand, because these groups that go about calling him an anti-Semite, they get venues cancelled. And now we can see how it's led to his banning over in Australia. And they say it's because he talks about vaccines, he talks about climate change. But you have to take a look at the bigger picture. And what Scott's saying there, he does point out the Zionist role in all of this. But it's not just them behind all of the things going on in the world. But they're certainly the ones that have all of the influence, Scott. And it's more open in your country, the kind of Israel influence. But in this country, it's no different. We've got the Jewish lobby, things like that. And anyone who dares to speak anything, not against the people of Israel, but like you say, question the government. Oh, man, it's bloody murder. They just go after them big time.
Yeah, and I also have to point out that there are Zionists out there who aren't even Jewish.
Big time.
They just support the Zionist agenda.
I say they hide behind it.
Religion.
I say they hide behind, like, Judaism. They use that as a vehicle, Scott. And it's almost like a convenient straw man. People start shouting at the Jews when these Zionists are a different class, a different species altogether.
Exactly. No, you're right. They use that as a shield in order to, to continue their agenda and to push their agenda without facing any sort of criticism or pushback, right? So, they're able to implement this sort of political ideology under the guise of religion by kind of conflating the two together. And so that's, like I said, that's why I was pretty, I was like, man, really? When I was watching that thing at AIPAC and Pompeo was up there basically equating the two together, that there was no difference between Zionism and being an anti-Semite. And so, they're starting to push that. So, it just makes you wonder, further down the pike, down the road, if we're going to start seeing this crackdown on, this more of a crackdown on people questioning, like, the Zionist agenda, as opposed to, being blatantly anti-Semitic or something like that, or blaming everything on the Jews. Just questioning anything in general all of a sudden gets you labeled an anti-Semite. And so
not only that, just questioning anything. And as the show progresses, we're going to show how literally just questioning anything soon is going to lead to, harsh censorship, them coming after you. And I've got, I think, perfect examples to show you of how they're going to do this, how it's going to roll out. But that's all to come in the near future, down the road, as the show progresses. And one thing I have to bring up with you, Scott, before we go to the break here, quite interesting. And that is, you've had all of these accusations flying around about, Trump, Russian collusion, And you could say making false allegations against against a sitting president, that must be borderline treasonous, right? And you would expect somebody maybe, to face charges for that. And then you've got somebody who also made false accusations recently, and his name is Jesse Smollett. And I know you and Joe love him to bits. I mean, he made false accusations, and it looked like he was going to be dealt with really harshly. I think at one point he was facing something like 16 felonies for saying he'd been a victim of this Trump-inspired racial attack that had occurred, right? But now he's got off with it all, Scott. Come on, this must be really pleasing you, right? Because I know you're a big fan of Empire and Jesse Smollett.
Oh, my God, Kev. You are really, really, really doing your damnedest to wind me up today, aren't you?
I've just got the trigger events lined up, man. Bam, bam. To trigger him off, dude. Says here, Chicago mayor and police chief express fury as Jussie Smollett escapes 48 years. Listen to that, folks. 48 years in jail for his $10,000 bond after prosecutors dropped charges because he's not, quote, violent threat, as Empire actor insists he was telling the truth. So he's even doubling down on all of this, Scott. And you've got Mayor Rahm Emanuel condemned Jussie Smollett on Tuesday in a blistering press conference with police. He said it was a whitewash of justice, that he had been cleared on 16 counts and sent a clear message. Eddie T. Johnson, the Chicago Police Department superintendent, was equally enraged, as is Scotty Lopez. What's happening, man? You just get away with this stuff over there, dude?
Oh my God, dude. First of all,
yeah.
I'm going to have to process all of this information.
That police chief looks pissed, man. He looks like he's ready to go to war with somebody.
He totally is. 16 charges dropped just because they said he wasn't a threat. Was that their excuse? That
he's not a violent threat, so they just kind of dropped the charges. Let's listen to this here. So Scotty, come on, man. Unload. Talk to me, brother. What's going on?
Okay, so first of all, if they dropped all the charges and their excuse was, well, he's not a threat, then did they just not set a precedent for dropping charges on everybody that, say, is arrested for drug charges? You have a bag of weed on you. Does that mean you pose a threat? So shouldn't the charges be dropped?
Yo, dude, I'm sitting here nodding my head, man. Absolutely. So what's happened here? Has he got friends in high places, dude?
So from what I have heard, just kind of.
I like it. We deal in rumor and speculation here. I like it. Yeah. So what have you heard, Scott?
So I heard that there was an Obama lawyer that got involved.
The long-legged Mac Daddy. Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. And people need to understand that there is a lot of internal conflict that is taking place within Chicago as far as their government. I guess you could say their elected officials. There's a huge disconnect between the police department and the prosecutor. There's a huge disconnect between the police department and Rahm Emanuel himself. But as you can see, they seem to be on the same page right now as far as this is concerned. But what it looks like to me is that the prosecutor got paid a very, very hefty sum of cash to drop all the charges.
We're almost on the break. And, Jesse might not have got attacked that first time, but I wouldn't want to bump into that police chief and Rahm Emanuel down a dark alley tonight. Oh, no. These boys look like they are ready to go to town. That man's due a beating in their eyes. So then we'll be back after the break. We've got lots more to get into here on the Kev Baker Show. Life on Mars, no less. And, get this, Schrodinger's quantum kittens. And let's not forget, Article 13.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into the second part of today's Kev Baker Show. With me, your host, Kev Baker, and I have got with me the brilliant Scotty Lopez. And what we are going to discuss now affects us all. No matter where we live in the planet, this next story affects us all. And I repeat that because it truly is that important, and it's something we've covered here on the show before for some time now. It's something that platforms like YouTube even encouraged their users to get active, to get out there, make protest videos against something called Article 11 and Article 13 coming from the EU. Now, obviously, in the digital age that we live in, copyright laws have become antiquated. And this is a rewriting of the digital copyright laws that are more suited, more tailored to the digital age that we live in. And it's going to rewrite how people over here in the EU are able to do something like what I'm doing here. For example, the story that I'm about to read you, I can't technically read you it as of 1 hour ago when Article 13 was passed. Now, if I was to read you this full story from the BBC, technically, TFR could be liable to pay any cost for copyright incursions that have been made, because I don't have a license in place with the BBC to read any of their stories, nor do I have a license in place to even share a link in the chat room, and to do so would now be deemed illegal, albeit digitally. The headline, if I may dare read it, says Article 13, memes exempt, as the EU backs the controversial copyright law. And because we say silence is consent on here, do with me what they may. I will read you a couple of paragraphs. So ain't I got a big set today, yeah? Woohoo! Copyright laws, which critics say could change the internet, have been voted in by the European Parliament. The new rules include the controversial Article 13, which will hold tech firms responsible for material posted without copyright permission. Sharing memes and GIFs will still be allowed under the new laws. Hallelujah! Hey, ain't they good to us? Ain't they so bloody good to us? We can still use our GIFs. Wow, hey, I love the EU. Says many musicians and creators say the legislation will compensate artists fairly, but others argue that they will destroy user-generated content. I'm going to come down here because it explains what it is. It says the two clauses causing the most controversy are known as Article 11 and Article 13. Article 11 states that search engines and news aggregate platforms should pay to use links from news websites. And Article 13 holds larger technology companies responsible for material posted without a copyright license. Tech companies already remove music and videos which are copyrighted, but under the new laws, they'll be more liable for any copyrighted content. It means that they would need to apply filters to content before it is uploaded. And Article 13 does not include cloud storage services, and there are already existing exemptions, including parody, which, for example, includes memes. So, Scott, at one point we did think they were going to ban the memes altogether, didn't we? And we were saying how powerful memes are, especially at conveying messages and waking people up by sometimes pointing out the idiocy of some of the things around us. And Article 13, I'll get your thoughts on it here, but for me as a content creator on YouTube over in the EU, things are about to drastically change for me, Scott.
Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare, as far as what it's going to do. Like you were saying during the break, man, how are YouTube going to handle this? I mean, they're just going to have to go through this mass purge of anything that is posted from European users, right? Because they would all have to fall under this Article 13 stuff, and YouTube's going to have to adjust to that. They have to adhere to the local law, and that's the law of the land over there. So yeah, it's going to be absolutely devastating. I don't see how that environment is going to allow any sort of content creator to really function effectively in any way. You know, it's sad, you know. But, you know, I guess on the bright side, I can throw away my Article 13 frog meme. I had a meme set just so I could use it in case I needed to post it on a friend's Facebook page that may be in the EU, and I didn't want to get them in trouble. So I had an Article 13 version of Pepe the Frog who looked like he was drawn by Picasso. He kind of didn't look like Pepe, but you know, he was Article 13 compliant.
And you know, I'm just looking down the list here on YouTube right now, and people are already very, very active making videos about the fact that Article 13 has passed. And like I say, you know, even the sharing of links on Facebook could be liable for you to actually, for them to be, you know, some news agency say, well, you didn't have a license in place with us for people to be sharing that link. And this is all kind of now starting to take shape, Scott, with the, remember last week we were talking about the change to the news feed, the fact that all of that is going to be changed and that we're going to be looking at Facebook 2.0. And it sounds like all of this is all starting to tie together.
It's a way of suppressing speech and suppressing the flow of information under the guise of copyright. You know, that's exactly what it is. It's just another form of censorship and making it harder to create content and put out ideas and put out information online without having to go through a bunch of bullcrap. You know what I mean? So, you know, and of course it's the EU would support this. Of course they would. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, people need to get involved and they need to, you know, push back against this, and they need to, especially, you know, you guys in Europe definitely need to make your voices heard and let them know that, you know, this.
And people will be thinking, Scott, people will be thinking, but Kev, it's okay. You're going to be leaving the EU. You don't need to worry about it. Well, the last time I checked, I think all of these crazy new laws would still be binding for about 12 months. And do you really think we're getting out of the EU? Have you checked how Brexit's going lately? Not very well. I think days to go, or maybe not, because they're probably going to extend it. And then I think now Theresa May, she has no input on what happens with Brexit, which, as I've said before, she's done her job brilliantly. She's thrown many a spanner in the works. She doesn't work for us, folks. No politicians do. And they work for the same people bringing us laws like Article 11 and Article 13. And now it's all of the kind of daft cats in Parliament, the ones that want us to, you know, just forget about that democratic decision. You know, at best they might give us another vote, and then another vote, and another vote, just till we keep voting the way they want us to vote. Because really, in this new world order, they have got no plans to let the UK, and all of the billions of pounds that we put to the EU every year, we ain't going anywhere. And I know people have criticised me for saying that from the very start, but I still say it to this day. And it's looking more and more likely as each hour passes, the closer we get to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so these laws, like if one of your favourite YouTube channels, Scott, is over here in the EU, you got somebody like PewDiePie, right? I'm not sure if he lives in America now, but he's Swedish. I mean, some of the stuff he does, you're not going to see that anymore. You know, YouTube won't be able to risk that content in case some of it might be claimed for copyright at a later date. You know, parody videos, all the kind of stuff. You can't risk any of that. The stuff we do on streams, I won't be able to show even a minute's clip. You know, fair use, no such thing. Yeah, it's an article or a study that comes from Cornell University and it works over in the EU, over in the US. But it's got absolutely nothing to do with me here in the EU and Article 11 and Article 13. So, changing days, and this is the internet getting smaller and smaller and becoming that more kind of commercialized way because, you know, the only companies that'll be able to afford the licenses to share these links are going to be like mainstream companies anyway. And that's how you get rid of an up-and-coming alternative media when literally we have to play like word salad so we don't match any of the text in a story because that'll trip an algorithm. And they'll be like, oh, copyright material, feed gone. Madness, Scott. Real madness, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is all part of their, plan to take control of the internet. The internet has been a wild west for too long in their eyes. We've been able to exchange information freely, and I would say for the past, since the internet really kind of became popular, people started, getting access to it. It was a game changer, right? It started to shift the paradigm. People started moving away from watching television and relying on that for information to, well, now you get your information on the internet. You get your information from, various sources, be it whatever, independent media, alternative media, or even mainstream, whatever. You have options, and they don't want people to have those options. They want to control the internet like they control television, or even to a certain extent they control radio, right? I mean, you have the FCC and all of that stuff. It's not just a wild west on the radio. You have to watch what you say.
Yes, we have to mind our P's and watch our Q's, dot our I's and cross our T's, Mr. Scott.
Exactly. So, I mean, of course they're going to want some control over that. And the internet is just where the population goes for information now. And so they really want to take control of that so that they can, push the narrative, or, filter out what they want people to see, what they don't want them to see. They want control over it. And this is just part of it. This is just another step in that, along with the social credit system that they want to implement. A lot of the stuff that they're adopting from China, Google's going to China and helping them with their censorship, and you don't think that they're going to bring any of that back home and utilize it here. Well, they're already utilizing it. We can already see that they're already utilizing it. I mean, just because of the way the algorithms suppress people's posts on Facebook, and, the shadow banning and all of this stuff, they're implementing it, man. And, I hadn't listened to Alex, Mr. AJ in a while, and I decided to tune in today. And, it was interesting. He was talking about how, everybody's focused on the whole, Mueller report, no collusion thing.
No collusion, Lopez.
No collusion. And, that's nice and all, and, we got people, kind of gloating about it, haha, I told you so. And, I'm part of that too as well. But he said, you can't take your eye off the ball. And this whole censorship thing is still going on. The big tech companies, they're still out of control. And this is something that needs to be addressed now. Now that the whole Russia collusion distraction, I guess you could say, is gone and out of the way. We need to get focused, and we need to start looking at, a lot of this serious stuff that's going on. And, probably one of the main things going on right now is the censorship and the shadow banning and the deplatforming, and just how Facebook and Twitter and, Google / YouTube, whatever, Alphabet, they're all part of this, big tech oligopoly that has control over what we see. Something needs to be done about them. We really need to get focused and start focusing our efforts to affect some change as far as that is concerned. Because as you can see, that agenda is still rolling on, and, they just passed that Article 13 there in the EU. And so now it's real. Before it was all speculation and what is it going to be like if they pass this, or are they ever going to pass this? Well, it's passed. It's done. They're going to implement this stuff, and people are going to feel the effects of it. And so,
well, Scott, one thing I'll give Google and YouTube credit for, they were actually giving people all the graphics that they needed, and short videos and things, so they could make their own content. their own protest about Article 13. And just a couple of weeks ago, they've addressed it again. This is YouTube Creators, the official YouTube Creators channel. It's only a couple of minutes, but I want to see what they were saying just a few weeks ago, because they've been busy lobbying the EU, and they've been quite integral with what's going on, trying to, water down some of the legalese in this.
Well, before you play that, I just got to say, yeah, of course they're going to fight back against something like that, because that's a nightmare scenario for YouTube.
Yeah, for their algorithms. They need to really, the algorithms are going to have to change. They're going to have to put filters in place. And, the amount of people such as myself that are going to be wrongly flagged and things in the coming weeks and months is going to be off the charts.
And this is a perfect example of legislation, that is put forth by politicians that have absolutely no understanding of how the internet works.
You've seen that dude that runs it, Juncker. He's blitzed out his nut by noon every day. The guy is as drunk as a skunk. He's literally been held up at some of the presentations that he goes to. When Macron, the smallest man this side of Lolliput, has to hold you up when you're drunk, there's something far wrong, dude, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Juncker, he probably barely even knows how to operate his smartphone, let alone how the internet works.
I wouldn't trust him with a smartphone. You couldn't trust that cat. He might get drunk, you go to the toilet. Imagine him on Twitter, dude. It'd be hilarious.
You know what? He probably has somebody answer his phone for him. I was naive
Groom of
to
the
even
phone.
believe
Yes.
that he would actually use his phone.
Groom of the phone.
So
we'll listen to this guy before we run out of time here, Scott, because I want us to discuss what they're saying on the other side. And this is, like I say, from the YouTube creators. And again, you could call me a YouTube shill, because I say they've been quite active, proactive, in fact, in leading kind of demonstrations against the whole Article 13. So I've listened to this gentleman before. Let's listen to what he's got.
That.
Yeah, here we go. You see, let's pause it there, Scott, because already point number one, the role of rights holders. I mean, what do you have to have in place to claim that something is yours in the first place? Because it's quite fast and loose on YouTube as it is. You get people copyrighting, claiming you for things that blatantly isn't theirs. We see it all the time. There's scams that work like that. Audio companies, etc., that claim the ads on videos. And when you start digging into it, if you dig into it, it turns out they don't own the copyright in the first place. So how are they even going to police something like this in the first place? There's going to be opportunists out there looking at platforms as rich as Google, as rich as Facebook, thinking, ho, bada bing, bada boom, lawsuits in the room. And in reality, Facebook and all these other big tech companies, they face the risk of having to put out multiple fires, Scotty, all of the time, unless they come down with blanket censorship.
Bada bing, bada boom. And what I say, it was just a backdoor for censorship. It's just censorship under the guise of copyright, and I've talked about this before. Popeye's talked about this before. He did an excellent broadcast quite a few years ago about this. And that's exactly what it is. The whole copyright thing is just sort of a straw man, I guess you could say, because it's really about censorship. And also, what they want is for people to have to jump through so many hoops that maybe a lot of them decide that in the end it's not worth it. That, it's going to be too much to be a content creator. I have to go through so much crap, and I have to adhere to so many little rules and regulations, and am I violating Article 13 and blah, 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 blah. And then, they're just going to throw their hands up and be like, nah, screw it. I'm not going to do it.
I'm going to have to lie to people if I'm making a video. I'll say, well, I was walking to the shop today, and I was speaking to a guy about this scientific study that took place over in Geneva. I'm not even going to be able to say that I found it on a website, Scott. I'm going to have to randomly make up dudes in the street.
And it's crazy, and yeah, I mean, YouTube is correct on this because it's a nightmare. Like I said, it's a nightmare scenario for them. Like you said, they're going to be running around trying to put fires out everywhere. And the amount of resources that they're going to have to put in to try and police this, or,
I would watch out. People, write this down. Within the next 2 weeks, watch for an outage on YouTube for even an hour, a couple of hours. Just watch for some downtime, because there's going to have to be an algorithm upgrade. There's going to have to be something that changes over here, and we'll see the internet. Twitter will go on fire. It'll explode. There'll have been whistleblowers about to tell us Nibiru was incoming. George Bush, the young ones riding unicorns, stuff like that. It was just about to break on Facebook and YouTube, but they had to pull the website, that kind of thing. But I really do think there's going to be some technical kind of update. So that might be interesting to keep our eye on that one, Scott. We had one on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, just coincided with Mark and his, yes, we're going to make it all nice and cozy in here for you. Don't worry about people listening in, Scott. We've got the end-to-end encryption.
What was interesting about that whole outage with Facebook? Said I noticed this. I didn't notice it immediately, but then I started noticing it maybe a few days after the outage. A lot of pages and people that I follow that I hadn't seen popping up in my newsfeed all of a sudden started popping up in my newsfeed again.
Wow, it was almost, dude, that's like, usually it's the kind of inversion of that. Usually things are disappeared. They go down the memory hole, man.
Yeah, it was very, very weird. I saw I'm looking through my newsfeed now, and I'm noticing posts from a lot of activist pages that I used to be involved in, and people that I hadn't seen posted in a while. So they obviously adjusted something with the algorithm. I honestly wonder if, because of all of this debate about censorship and that they've been in the hot seat. We had Zucker turd up there. Zucker
turd, drinking the water. World's most famous NPC.
Yeah. So I'm wondering right now if there's this internal conflict going on within Facebook of, should we loosen the algorithm? Should we start letting people kind of see things again, or should we, I wonder if they're trying to dial it back maybe and gain a little confidence from the people again, or
Scott, that would explain, right? That would explain the story that was out there a few weeks ago that said Mark Zuckerberg has built an escape chute in his office boardroom. Maybe there is some kind of division in there. There's factions. They're all going about Facebook HQ, and you've got Zuckerberg just sitting by the escape hatch, ready to go down it head first into a laundry basket, El Chapo style. Maybe he's got a tunnel, dude. He's got a tunnel and a motorbike on a train track, and he's going to go over the border to Mexico, man. I'm telling you, dude. He's gonna be like El Chapo, only backwards. He's going to go into Mexico.
El Zucco.
Yeah,
but we had two top executives from Facebook step down pretty recently. I think the second under Zuckerberg and another guy. So there is internal stuff going on there, and of course they put a nice face on it and they say, oh, they left to do other things, and you really don't get the full story of why they left.
Are we going to see a spate of them going for a long walk off short piers and diving off the 13th floor of buildings and things, Scott? Is that the next stage?
Never know.
Night of the Facebook long thumb. Night of the long thumb. That's it, man. That's when Zuckerberg strikes. We'll be back on the other side, folks. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker show with my special guest and good friend Scotty Lopez, and joining us now as well, back from another dimension, is Jimmy Jeans. He is here too. So not one, but 2 of, 3 of the Woo crew, if I could count right. Maybe I've been taking some of that Common Core maths. But before the break, we were getting into Article 13 and how it's a backdoor to censorship. And sometimes I think, our own conspiracies may come back to bite us on the bottom. Now, from time to time on this show right here, I have brought up one of the stranger and more viral conspiracies in my lifetime, which has been this thing called QAnon. Remember when it first started coming onto the internet, and myself and Scotty and Jimmy and others, we would poke a little fun at it because of that lack of information as to just what was going on there. And over time, we were able to develop a picture that certainly showed it was nothing to do with some Trump insider or anyone from the intelligence services. Now, at the time, if you remember, and I know a lot of the same people in the chat today have been listening to the show all of that time, and you'll remember all of us saying, that inevitably this would end up having a violent end, and that it could be used for further censorship to be used against all of us. And in this next segment, we're going to delve deeper into that. We're going to take a closer look at that and how that's all taking shape. And also just what QAnon's developed into. Because at the start, again, I was guilty of poking a bit of fun at QAnon. And again, it was at QAnon and the people behind it, as opposed to those following it. But from time to time, I said it's almost like a techno cult. And we would laugh and we would joke about that. But then today I was doing a bit of reading and, oh my word, wow. What has that prophecy been fulfilled, as we're going to find out in just a moment. But QAnon, violent ends. How can I possibly say that for something running on 4chan, 8chan and the Patriot Soapbox? There's nothing violent about mobilising patriots behind Trump, Kev. I've heard all of that. However, in recent times, there's been a number of stories we could choose from. But myself and Scott and the guys, we've often spoke about this Gambino crime boss that was gunned down. And when the suspect appeared in court, he had all of this stuff about Q written on his hand, MAGA, all the rest of it. Well, the latest on that story is Gambino mob boss shooting suspect was, quote, radicalised by QAnon, far right and even Trump, lawyer says. Now, of course, I can't read out all of this, possibly because, I'm in the EU. But it might say, an attorney from the Staten Island man accused of killing a reputed Gambino mob boss says the 24-year-old suspect was influenced by far-right internet rhetoric and radicalised by the QAnon conspiracy theory and President Donald Trump. Anthony Camello appeared in St. George Criminal Court Monday and was arraigned on charges of murder, assault and criminal possession of a weapon in connection with the March the 13th shooting of Francesco Frankie Boy Cali outside his home. While his client did not plead guilty to the crime, lawyer Robert Gottlieb cited, quote, other right-wing conspiracy websites, hate words that have been spewed by citizens, including politicians, including right at the White House. In court, Camello displayed handwritten pro-Trump slogans on his palm, including the phrases MAGA forever, Make America Great Again, and Patriots in Charge. Camello was remanded without bail, and Gottlieb told the court Camello's family and friends recognised and pick up on significant changes in him over the past few months. Something dramatically happened to him that certainly seems to have been affected by the hate spewed throughout the internet. And that's why, and I'll come to you first, Scott, that's why I think they could use something like QAnon to clamp down on what all of us have to say on the internet. Because, we'll all be lumped in with this hate speech and radicalising people. We can add to that ridiculous study that came out the other day connecting people who believe in conspiracy theories to being petty criminals. So you can see how they could use something like QAnon, and that's not attacking anybody following it. Please don't think that. But that whole conspiracy could be used as the impetus to clamp down further on what we can and can't say on the internet. Or am I just going off the deep end, Scott?
No, you're spot on with this. And, we have broken down and analyzed this for a while. Like you said, we've been following this thing since it first popped up, this whole Q thing. And of course, I was intrigued at first. I kind of followed it a little bit or whatever, but, I could see it for what it was after a while and was like, okay, but you're right. I mean, it was bound to probably start. You could see if you followed it any, if you followed it any, you could see the types of people that were being drawn to it. You know what I mean? So, and that's not saying everybody that follows Q is a bad person or a crazy person, but it does seem to suck in a lot of people that probably are not so stable. They would be drawn to something like that.
They've preyed on people. They've literally preyed on patriots that aren't quite internet savvy. And that's no criticism. It's just they're not used to the way that 4chan or 8chan work. That they may be a bit naive to the fact that, there are scam artists out there that will pretend to be X, Y, and Z just for coin. And they're the ones that they've preyed on.
Too. Their main demographic that they suck in are like conservative boomers that were born in the 50s or 60s. You know what I mean? So you're right. They're not very tech savvy. They're the kind of people that generally only read the headline as it goes through their news feed. And, it's just that older demographic of people that are into it. Now, obviously this guy that killed the mob boss dude, he was 24, so he wasn't one of these older people. He obviously probably was somewhat tech savvy being he's, his younger age. But the thing is that it seems to draw in people like that. And remember, you had that one guy in the van that had blocked off Hoover Dam, and he had a gun, and he was a Q guy. And wasn't the guy that went to Comet Ping Pong with the gun, was he a Q person too?
Yeah, and the lines are blurred between QAnon and PG now. And PG is obviously the one that we all started talking about after the emails.
They're intertwined.
Yep.
They're intertwined because they're referenced back and forth between each other. So I consider them kind of all in the same sort of pool because, like you said, the lines are blurred between them. But the thing is they are going to use it to for censorship purposes. And as you can see, you could already see the agenda that was just being pushed in the story that you read. They mentioned it with right wing and Trump himself. Trump is the...
And all of this is hate speech, anything, any kind of questioning from the right is hate speech. And Jimmy, I'll bring you in here because we have spoke about this a number of times. And it's sad to see that it is playing out like this. Now, let's think 360, let's not be closed-minded. It could well be that this guy, some kind of Manchurian candidate, some kind of stooge that they've put in there, he's got absolutely no interest in QAnon in reality, but they get him to write that on his hand. They could have him appear in the court, and it starts the conversation, and it leads to the censorship we're talking about. So, I'm totally open to what this guy's role in all of this may be. But your thoughts on the Gambino thing, Jimmy, and Q in general, before I go into something that I was reading today that's really interesting. It's really kind of taking a look at the psychology of all of this. But Jimmy, your thoughts?
Yeah, the Q phenomenon took over or whatever, got a bunch of people looking at stuff that they didn't ever see before. A lot of people got involved with that because they became truthers as a result of the Q phenomenon or whatever. But realistically, it's this guy with the thing on his hand, the Q on his hand, and this guy who got off in Chicago. They're kind of like the same. It's kind of the same thing. Okay, the guy in Chicago clearly was doing that because someone told him to. In other words, he was trying to capitalize on a moment of racial tension in America.
See, I was saying this with Scotty earlier. I'd heard somebody on Jonesy, and they were hinting at the fact that the Chicago police, this was a few weeks ago, they were looking at, Smollett's kind of contact list in his phone because he was making phone calls in the build-up to this. And the name Obama and Rahm Emanuel came up because he's been pictured several times with Obama. And I'm sure that was the angle they were coming at it from. Who put him up to this?
Well, that's the angle that I'm coming at it from because I'm saying this is what that punk said. because he went into jail for about 5 minutes, and then he called his lawyer and he said, "You better get somebody down here right now and get me out of here, or else I'm gonna start telling people about who I've been talking to and who put me up to this." Because I guarantee you, see, these are these incidents that we talk about all the time, right?
He's definitely pulled a string somewhere. He's had strings pulled somewhere, man. You don't just walk out after 16 charges brought on your ass, especially when you see the police chief as determined as he is. You don't just walk out of that through luck. I'm not buying that.
No, they have. Here's the thing, though. That faction has pull in that area, but where they don't have pull is with the federal government.
So how does this link to your QAnon, dude? So I can get back to my QAnon.
Dude is the same. He's the same thing. He's another one of these things that gets put out there in the media for people to suck up. In other words, he's appealing by putting that Q up. He's appealing to a certain segment of the population. You know what I'm saying? Just like that other incident over there was appealing to a certain segment of the population. It's just another way of putting that out there to then turn it around on people like you guys are saying that are doing content, putting content up. You know, if you put content up and, you know, all of a sudden this whole QAnon thing is going to put you right in some kind of an algorithm, right? Still there.
Yeah, just you caught me out of left field there with algorithms, man. I was just getting the next thing pulled up, ready to get into.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, you know, these are topics and subjects that are in the minds of people everywhere, and so by the simple putting that on your hand. I mean, did he put it on his hand, or did somebody say, "Hey, Bob, put that on your hand, and I'll give you 10 grand or whatever"? I mean, who knows? I don't know, but it's the same thing as that other thing. It's another advertisement, you know, paid announcement for the Viewpoint. You know, and the Viewpoint is, look at these crazy Q followers that are out there shooting people and running them over, making sure they're dead. Yeah, they're Q followers, right? Go ahead, Scotty.
Well, you know, it makes me think about, remember we were talking about Kev, I think it was on it might have been the Saturday or the Sunday live stream. It might have been the Sunday stream when we were talking, we were talking about 9/11 and the, you know, PNAC and Project for a New American Century, and, you know, how they needed a Pearl Harbor, you know, a catalyzing event, a new Pearl Harbor. And I think it was Popeye was talking about how they want something like that on the internet front, on the cyber front, you know, a cyber Pearl Harbor, so that they can implement their censorship and all of that. It just makes you wonder, you know, what role all of this plays. You know, what really is going to be that internet Pearl Harbor? What if there is a massive cult on the internet recruiting people and getting them to do things?
There is. There is. And that's exactly where we're going next, because it's this whole cult thing. And I wanted to revisit and retest my tongue-in-cheek poke at the QAnon crowd in the early days of laughing about how it was developing into a cult. So today I went looking, and there are certain telltale signs of certain checklists that you can look at that really give you a good pointer as to where a group's going, what's just going on with the dynamic of the people around you. So we're going to look at a few of these little kind of indicators right now. We're going to see how many we can check off in reference to QAnon. And this is where it gets really interesting, folks. And this is where anyone who attacks me for calling them a cult after this, well, I feel justified anyway. I have certainly no problem if they're offended at me calling them that, because as I'm about to demonstrate, that's exactly what they've become. It says here, one of the signs is the group displays excessively zealous and unquestioning commitment to its leader and, whether he is alive or dead, and in this case I'm going to add anonymous, regards his belief system, ideology and practices as the truth, as the law. I'd say that fits. We can tick that one off. Next.
Trust the plan.
Trust the plan. Questioning, doubt, and dissent are discouraged or even punished. Now, we've seen people who have been, air quotes, in the Q cult. I'll use the YouTuber Isaac Green as an example. And at the very start, he was analysing the Q posts. And he wasn't making any money off it because in the early days, Q was very, very adamant that nobody should profit from this. And when he started to see that there was money being made and they tried to offer him a role in the inner circle, he came forward and he exposed it all. And he said, well, I'm not wanting to have anything to do with that. And what we seen then was the people who had been following him, absolutely praising him to the rafters, they turned on him on a heartbeat. And that's because he was then questioning it and pointing out obvious flaws, obvious lies in this conspiracy that was building momentum all of the time. So yes, we have seen people being viciously attacked online, being doxxed, things like that, just for questioning what QAnon is. So we can tick that one off. Says here, the leadership dictates sometimes in great detail how members should think, act, and feel. For example, members must get permission to date, change jobs, marry. Leaders prescribe what types of clothes to wear. Now, we can't tick that one off, okay? We can't go that far. That sounds more of your kind of religious, kind of physically living on a compound kind of cult. So we can go by that one. It says that the group is elitist, claiming a special, exalted status for itself. Its leader and members, for example, the leader is considered the Messiah, a special being, an avatar for the group, and or the leader is on a special mission to save humanity. I think we can check that one off, boys. Q, you would say? He's, trust his plan.
Check on that one.
Yep, definitely. He's going to save humanity with all the mass arrests that are around the corner, and around the corner, and around the corner. Says here, the next one, the group has a polarized us versus them mentality, which may cause conflict with the wider society. Well, that's exactly what we've been discussing, folks. And you can talk about the young man who went on to stab his father, and his mother was on the phone to the police explaining how he had been convinced by the internet that because they voted for Hillary Clinton, they were part of an elitist, leftist paedophile ring. So we can see that, yes, it certainly has an us versus them mentality. Anything the mainstream media says, it has to be a lie. And this is something that they've really programmed into people from the start. And I say programmed because, Scott, we were listening to one of these Q posts, Q pushers the other night. And it's very much, I was comparing it to like a modern day number station out of Russia where you're just programmed what to think, what everything means. You're not told to question anything. You're told exactly what it means, and you have to go out and repeat that verbatim exactly to anyone else who tells you.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. It was like a monotone voice reading of all of the posts, and like you said, no questioning, no breakdown. The only breakdown of the posts were basically what they were wanting the people to believe that the posts stood for, or what the meaning behind them was. I don't know, but yeah, it was a very, very bizarre sort of thing to tune into and see. It was just like this brainwashing operation or something. Just
that's what it was like. Yeah, the leader is not accountable to any authorities, unlike, for example, teachers, military commanders, or ministers, priests, monks, rabbis for mainstream religious denominations. I'm not sure we can really put that one in. The group teaches or implies that its supposedly exalted ends justify whatever means is deemed necessary. Now, at one point, QAnon told its followers, or his followers, or her followers, that disinformation is necessary. So you can see how they will go to any ends. Even when they're caught up in a lie, they get out of it by saying, but it's necessary to lie sometimes. So they will go to any ends to keep the gravy train running. And it says the leadership induces feelings of shame and or guilt in order to influence and or control members. Often this is done through peer pressure and subtle forms of persuasion. Saying things like, well, you don't trust the deep state, do you? That's the sort of thing Hillary Clinton and John Podesta get up to, right? You don't support them, do you? Oh man, if you support them, you're into some really shady, dark crimes. Yeah, you know how they make you feel kind of bad if you were to, question anything that way? Yeah, I'd say that box is ticked. The group is preoccupied with bringing in new members. Tick. The group is preoccupied with making money. Tick. Members are expected to devote inordinate times or amount of time to the group and group-related activities, and once you get invited into that inner circle, that alliance, as myself and Scott had dealings with, then you better believe it's going to be very, very pressing on your time, because then you're out there seeding all of the tweets that would eventually get picked up and go viral. After that Secret Service agent, Yeah,
been recruited. Q himself is proud of you for taking time to inform everybody.
Yeah, to post tweets on the internet and memes, because we can still have memes under Article 13. It says here, we're almost finished, and I know Jimmy's got something to put in here. It says, the most loyal members, the true believers, feel there can be no life outside the context of the group. They believe there is no other way to be, and often fear reprisals to themselves or others if they leave or even consider leaving the group. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Pamphlet Anon, a.k.a. QAnon, on the Patriot Soapbox, that broadcast about QAnon 24/7 from their bolt hole that is absolutely pimped out with a top-of-the-range pinball machine and all of the good things that QAnon money can buy. Yes, that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
How many bullet points was that for a cult? Was that 10? About 10 bullet points?
10 or so, yeah. I think we got about maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah, we got about 8. So 80% likelihood that it falls under the category of a cult. Yeah, I would say so.
And that's nothing against the people they've brought into it, Jimmy. It's only the people that are running it that I go after. That's the ones I truly criticize. But kind of selfishly feel kind of justified back in the day saying that it was a cult. It was the future affecting the past, Jimmy. It was that whole quantum thing going on.
Yeah, it is a quantum thing, man. And it's quantum in the sense that I had a friend. I mean, people laugh at the word cult. They think, I'd never be in a cult. And I had a buddy. He was a male model. He's super good looking. He got approached at a supermarket in a line. This lady introduced herself, so they were doing a Bible reading. And
was she a seductive character, Jimmy?
She was. And she actually was a good-looking woman, too.
There you go.
So she invited him over for this Bible reading, and I'll just tell you, one thing led to another. He was seeking, and he found himself a cult. And he was, like I say, he was a super smart guy. He got all involved in it, man, to the point where he was literally thinking about committing suicide because they told him after he got rebaptized in this cult that if he was to go back and sin again, it would be even worse than it was before. Oh. So they had convinced him. Yeah, I'm just saying. So smart people can get sucked into a cult. I mean, I've noticed that there's this on these boards last week. I noticed that there's this sort of group of people calling themselves mildly autistic. It's like a mildly autistic army of people that sit there all day long and just research stuff. Have you heard about this? Because this is the people that
this is what the 4chan and 8chan, they call them the autist army, basically. And it's the people that basically sit there and they kind of obsessively research online and all that stuff. And of course, the joke is that maybe they have a mild form of autism or something, and that's why they're so good at being able to just do all this crazy research online or look all this stuff up or whatever. But yeah, that's where all that comes from.
That's one of the things, that QAnon, I have to thank it for. The people that brought me into contact with, obviously Unirock, but some of the kind of conversations that I'm privy to, some of the information, the research from this autistic army that Scott's talking about here, is absolutely mind-blowing. Some of the connections that you see being made and some of the things that you wish you didn't know about what's going on behind the scenes.
You got to remember, they're the same ones that were able to locate the flag that...
yeah, man.
put up using the stars and navigation and all that stuff. Crazy stuff.
Shia LaBeouf, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kev Baker. We're moving into the final part of today's Kev Baker Show, right here on TFRLive.com. Don't forget, Joe Joseph, our other partner in crime, he'll be taken to the airwaves right after today's show. I've got Scotty Lopez and Jimmy Jeans here. Before the break, I was getting back into my favourite internet pastime of triggering the cult of Q. And yes, I think I can safely say that they've developed and emerged into some kind of techno cult. And that's no kind of blemish or insult aimed at any of the followers. They've been duped, cleverly duped, seduced, as Jimmy would say, into what is now, quite frankly and quite honestly, a cult. So, Scott, I know you've got something to add to this, you know. I'm glad you want to take some of the heat off me. The comments are going to be absolutely lovely on this video when it goes up onto YouTube. But hey-ho, that's the way it goes. You know, you take the most flack when you're over the target.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, you know, going back to what Jimmy said about, you know, there are very smart people who get seduced and sucked into cults. It's not like, you know, people that you wouldn't even think that would end up being in a cult somehow end up in cults, you know. And a good example would be like Scientology. You know, there's a lot of people that are Scientologists that, you know, they don't really, you know, believe it's a cult, or they don't realize it, you know. And there's a lot of very smart people that are into Scientology. I mean, you have actors, you have doctors, you know, you have people who are intelligent and they're in there and they don't believe it's a cult. But, you know, you do the research and you do the looking and you find out, yeah, you know, Scientology pretty much checks all the marks for being a cult, you know, most of them. And so, yeah, I don't know, man, you know, and like I said, we're not trying to knock all of the people who follow Q or whatever. You know, a lot of these people don't even realize that they've kind of signed up to this whole thing. And
it is starting to trigger people violently. That's the thing. And we predicted that back in the day, because they literally are, they're programming people. And now we're seeing it playing out. And I just want to address something quickly before Jimmy weighs in on this. There was a bit of confusion in the chat room during the break there. Norman was trying to get my attention about somebody who comes in and out our chat from time to time, Blue Raven. And something to do with Morgellons came up in the conversation. And if there's anyone out there having problems, you know, I would advise you to go to whistleblowerheroes.org. That's whistleblowerheroes.org. That's one of our hosts here on the network, Ella. She actually works there. That's for targeted individuals that can get in touch. And I would advise you go to that website, and there's a number there that you can phone if you are suffering from any kind of targeting, Morgellons, anything like that. So, Norman, I hope that helps. I wish I could help people with Morgellons. I have no answers to give people with that. I talk about it, yeah, but I would get in touch with whistleblowerheroes.org. Hope you've got a note of that website. So, Jimmy, back to you on the subject of the cults, man.
Yeah, well, see, the thing is my buddy, like I said, he, you know, on the Scientology side, I could speak to this a little bit too, because I had buddies that were involved in Scientology. But I was back to this other thing, which this thing was called the First Church of Christ. Okay. And so my buddy, I mean, he was being in a cult was the furthest thing from this guy's mind. Seriously, his father literally came out to Los Angeles from the East Coast to visit him. They got the best relationship they ever had. He had his father go down there. His father got into it, and his father was in it. And then his father went home and snapped out of it and looked it up, and sure enough, the thing was on the cult awareness watch list, and the thing was totally a cult. And so, he brought me down there to one of the meetings, man. He's like, he wanted to get me involved. He was so stoked on it, because that's what people do. That's what Kev's talking about. When people get stoked on Q, they get stoked on this information. One thing leads to another. They find out this is true, that's true. So it all must be true. Right? So,
yeah, I mean, it's very similar. Cults are very similar to Ponzi schemes, except it's an emotion-based Ponzi scheme.
And that's why you always need new people coming in at the bottom end, Scott.
Yeah,
exactly.
You need fresh meat.
Yeah, you need fresh meat to come in, man, and you need to seduce them and suck them in, and that's exactly what it is. It's a very similar system,
You remember this guy up in Oregon, the Bhagwan Rashami or whatever he was? I forget what the guy's name was. Something like that, though. And they were trying to get him elected into some office, and they literally went around and poisoned people at salad bars. They were putting poisoning people with salmonella, getting them sick. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about with this other stuff, because people sat around here for how many years now trusting the plan? People are sick of trusting the plan. People start taking plan in their own hands, and that's what we're talking about.
Yes, exactly. And so we're reaching that point, right? And like you said, Kev, eventually this was going to have some kind of a violent outcome at some point. And what it is that a lot of these people, like Jimmy just said, trust the plan, all of this stuff is coming down the pike. Well, it's not happening. And so people are going to start making it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That maybe they're going to feel like, maybe they're going to feel like that they're going to be the ones to execute the plan and to do all of this. And so, it's a very dangerous game that they're playing by putting all of this stuff out there and building everyone up and hyping all of this stuff up, knowing that it damn well is never going to happen. Look, people, do you really believe that Hillary Clinton is ever going to be arrested? Realistically,
but she didn't get more with Barack Obama just now, Scott. They didn't get more. I heard it. Q post 1034. Get more.
Yeah, none of these people are ever going to pay for their crimes. Let's just admit it. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a sad fact, but the people who face the consequences for stuff like there's a certain threshold that they will not cross, and that there's certain people who will never be touched. And the only people who will ever be touched by anything are the low-hanging fruit that are going to be thrown under the bus. But if you actually believe that any of these high-ranking people who have been in government, especially somebody like Hillary Clinton or whatever, is ever going to be led away on camera in handcuffs, and
she can barely walk normally, let alone do a perp walk. She can't even walk to the toilet on a good day.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You can trust the plan all you want. You can wait for the indictments all you want.
Yeah, 40,000 indictments, Scott. 40,000 sealed indictments that are coming tomorrow.
There is some guy sitting in some room somewhere, polishing and cleaning his weapon, going, I'm sick of waiting for, I'm going to, They got all the names, right? Isn't there a list? I mean, just the list. Remember this other guy who went around with the bomb?
One of the apps that they had on the phone to get your Q posts was taking all of your GPS location and everything else off it. So yes, they are all geotagged. Literally, you have been geotagged. But we're running out of time, gents, and there's another story I want to get to tonight. And I want to give a big shout out to Lucky in the chat room. She dropped this in the TFR family chat today. It inspired me to go and make a little video, because we know that I love to look outwards, and especially when it comes to Mars. Often on the show, we talk about Al-Kahiri, the Arabic name for Cairo, which just happens to mean Mars. And then we have the connection between Cairo and Mars in the shape of pyramids. Well, NASA, and you know how I've been shilling for NASA in recent times with my good friend Brendan Drackler. They have now. What's that? I mean,
trashing Q and shilling for NASA.
I know, dude. I've even been shilling for D-Wave as well, man. I've been talking kindly about Geordie. I know. Change days, Scott. Change days. Bizarro land. But no, there has been massive news, in my opinion, Now, they say this is a controversial study. However, it has been peer-reviewed, and the majority of scientists that looked at it say it definitely needs further study, further investigation, because they've only gone and found magic mushrooms growing on Mars. Well, maybe not the psilocybin magic ones that we're used to down here, but fungi all the same. It says here, life on Mars shock claim as growing fungi. Let me repeat that. Growing fungi. They've seen it growing, folks. Is spotted in Mars Curiosity rover snaps. So because of Article 13, I will give you just a couple of paragraphs here, because I don't have a relationship with the Sun newspaper. I'm not one of their signed up licensed aggregators. It says a group of scientists claim to have found proof of mushrooms growing on the surface of the supposedly barren planet. Now, in the controversial study, the alien life hunters say they have seen what appeared to be algae, lichens, and Martian mushrooms in images taken by NASA rovers Opportunity and Curiosity. Now, the picture's very hard to tell what's going on. It's like little globules, little balls that you see very kind of zoomed in on the soil in one picture. Another picture's got a rock where there's it does look like some kind of coral, some kind of algae on it. There's another one where it looks almost like a hollowed out rock. They say lichens maybe visible on there. And Scott, it's going to be controversial, right? It comes from NASA. People are going to rightly question this. However, we've often spoke about the potential for life up there. And they say that over the period of 3 days, they watched these things growing out of the ground. Physically watched them changing. They had stalks, they've got stems. And I say that this is intelligent life. And the reason I say that is because we share a kind of like for somebody called Paul Stamets. And he's famous for one of his TED Talk videos where 6 ways mushrooms could save the world. And he's an expert in fungi and all this kind of stuff. And when you listen to him talk, it's hard to argue against fungi, mushrooms, all the rest of it not being intelligent, Scotty. In fact, I would say it's super intelligent life.
Yeah, it seems like mycelium, fungi is definitely there's a lot more going on with it than what we think. And he explained it. He explained a lot of these mycelium colonies, in the forest as acting like basically nature's internet and allowing other plant life and animals to communicate with each other through this network. It's amazing stuff. But I think these photographs are very compelling, especially this top one. With these round orb sort of things on it. But you can see like the top one, it almost looks like two, like it's about to split like a cell or something. You know what I mean?
Like that division, so, man. It's classic, isn't it?
That's a very classic organism sort of trait, and the bottom one where it says where it shows lichens or whatever. Yeah, you can see them like on that rock in the lower left hand side. You can just see those little ball kind of things growing in that darker area. Those are the lichens, I guess.
Yep.
So no, I would say this is very compelling evidence. Obviously not surprising. I mean, Mars would be the best candidate to have any sort of
what about Europa, dude? What about Europa? Because we were speaking about Europa with Mr. Drackler on the show, and he was talking about the vents in the ocean underneath the ice. You're talking about warm water vents, Scott, and we see what happens at the bottom of our ocean when you have like these volcanic kind of vents and the beasties and the creatures that are able to form at these tremendous pressures. Who's to say that's not happening up there on Europa? And Brendan we were speculating, but we were talking about octopus or octopi, and whether they could be intelligent forms of life as well, because they too are highly intelligent.
Yeah, I was about to say, Europa. That's probably the next best candidate, if not maybe even better, because we're talking about actual liquid water in massive quantities on that moon. So definitely there. And yeah, could it be complex organisms living down there? You know, like you said, octopi or something along that lines, something more than just single cell organisms.
That's a great word, octopi. Jimmy, talk to us about the potential for Europa octopi.
I know these octopi have been coming up in conversations for the last couple of years because they kind of decided that they're aliens living on this planet in our oceans. There's something strange about the octopi, that's for sure.
They're super smart. They're another one of those sea creatures that are like extremely intelligent, but they're intelligent in a way that I don't think we can understand. You know, it's like it's just like a different form of intelligence, but they're super smart. And I guess they said if you wanted to try to equate the intelligence of an octopus, which I don't think you can quantify.
No.
Intelligence of a creature that you're not. You know what I mean? Like you're not that creature. So how would a human be able to quantify the intelligence of that creature? But basically they say that an octopus roughly has the intelligence of like a German Shepherd or something like that. So I mean that's pretty smart, I guess. Although I think they're even smarter than that.
Compared to today's average human being, I would say that's probably on the very smart range, Scott, to be honest with you. It says here, new photographs of Martian mushrooms have left some scientists convinced that there is life on the red planet. A new study published in the Journal of Astrobiology builds upon 15 images captured by NASA's Curiosity rover. As part of its 2-year mission, Curiosity trained its camera on what appears to be algae, lichen, and mushrooms. The photos seem to show the potential life forms growing larger and emerging from the red sands of Mars. Dr. Regina Das, a microbiologist from Pondicherry University in India, argued that no known non-living force could have produced the apparent growths. She told the Express there are no geological or abiogenic forces on Earth which can produce sedimentary structures by the hundreds which have mushroom shapes, stems, stalks, and sheds what looks like spores on the surrounding surface. In fact, 15 specimens were photographed by NASA growing out of the ground in just 3 days alone. Now, NASA is yet to comment on the research, but nobody cares about that because nobody will believe them anyway. But the majority of experts involved in the peer-reviewed process agree. Get that, folks? They agree with the mushroom hypothesis. So I think this is really big news. I really do, Scott. Jimmy, guys, I think it's big.
I got an awesome idea. Let's collect some of it and bring it back to Earth because nothing could go wrong.
Exactly, Jimmy. I mean, nothing could go wrong with Martian mushrooms, right?
You got me thinking now. Martian mushrooms.
You know, I tell you what, man, if I could even say to Elon, I'll go up with you just to be like your canary in the mushroom mine. They can feed the mushrooms to me first, and we'll see if I trip my balls off, and then we'll see if it's good to go.
All right. But in the meantime, you can always come out here to California where I live. We can go out here to the cow pastures just up the road. And
you see, that's far easier. That's far more practical, far more logical, far more doable. But what do you think, Jimmy? Life on Mars,
Well, mushrooms to me are really an interesting subject, just like trees.
Yes. Part of that forest. It's part of that whole network, I think, Jimmy.
Yeah, and to see the mushroom in another place just kind of bolsters the theory that these are little network nodes that somehow are transmitting. They don't just grow for no reason. They have to be growing for a reason. They didn't just spark up there for no reason. And it's interesting too because there's supposed to be no moisture there, but mushrooms tend to like to be moist. And so that kind of brings up a whole other aspect of the story too, because where's this it's supposed to be no water, right? So something doesn't jive there. So if they say there's mushrooms and they say, well, they agree with that, then they have to be saying something else, but they're not saying it. It sounds like to me.
Well, you know what's quite interesting here, and Scott, I know you'll get this because I think you watch the show, but the new Star Trek Discovery series that's on Netflix, I've been very, very kind of complimentary in the fact that they came up with a whole new kind of propulsion system, and it was something called the Spore Drive. And it says here, imagine a microscopic web that spans the entire cosmos, an intergalactic ecosystem, an infinite number of roads leading everywhere. And it's interesting you bring up that node, that terminology there, Jimmy, because, you know, you think of it, let's speculate. We're going into not even hypothesizing. We're just that wonderland that Kev sometimes goes into, where we do have fungi all throughout the universe. Maybe it's one of the things that is really the first kind of ways that life can take hold. And then through quantum entanglement of some way that we haven't quite yet caught on to yet, there is a network. All of these different nodes, these spores of this particular type of fungi all connected together. And this is what they kind of depict in Star Trek. And if you can navigate to one place or another within the network, the connected spores, bada bing, bada boom, you basically get there faster than light. And it says the displacement activated spore hub drive, commonly shortened to spore drive or S drive, was an organic propulsion system the Federation experimented with during the 240s and dates in the way in the future, right? The technology used mycelium spores harvested from Prototaxitus stellavietori to jump and leap across the mycelial network. So, Scott, we're talking finding spores and fungi up there on Mars now. If there's fungi on the planet next to us, I would say it might be likely that we find fungi and mushrooms a lot more commonly than maybe we once thought. And let me go one sci-fi step further and say that, you know, it brings the S drive into play. Who says there isn't some kind of network? That's a different take on Stargate, Scott. If we can jump upon the mycelial superhighway.
Very interesting indeed. And obviously mycelium is probably one of the most basic forms of life, right? So if there were to be life on a planet, you probably would more than likely find it in the form of mycelium and mushrooms. That would probably be the base life form that you would find, apart from single cell, maybe bacteria or something like that. But multi-cell, starting to get into just the base sort of life form. I would say that mycelium would be probably very common across many, many planets.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, this is where it gets a bit kind of cool, weird. Myself and Scott made this connection one time before, but the character in Star Trek, the science officer, he's called Paul Stamets. He comes up with the spore drive, and it's Paul Stamets we were referring to earlier on when we were saying this is an expert on mushrooms, and he really will. He'll make a case for mushrooms being highly intelligent, so it's almost like Star Trek kind of tipping the hat to the work of Paul Stamets. So it makes you wonder, Jimmy, about these kind of invisible networks, this quantum field, perhaps, that exists that we don't know about.
I know. It's dripping with tantalizing roads, believe me.
And seductive characters?
Yeah, and dripping with seductive characters from head to toe. But seriously, though, these mushrooms that are on our planet, the question is now, are these mushrooms from here? Or do the spores just appear everywhere and then they send info back through the ether space to wherever they send their info to, wherever the mainframe is, Scotty?
We could do a whole show on mushrooms and the way that they work, the way that they communicate with other mushrooms and things, Scott.
I know.
And this is where that Paul Stamets dude comes into it. If you think it's interesting us kind of brainstorming this topic, I urge anyone out there, go and check out Stamets, because that's a mind blower, Scott.
Maybe you should shoot him an email. See what happens.
I think I might try that. Good call. I tried Randall Carlson. I got nothing back yet, so fingers crossed he'll answer back and we'll get him on about the Earth changes. But yes, Stamets. Absolutely.
The only way to guarantee you're not going to get a guest is to never send out that email.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. And that's why, on the 8th of April, ladies and gentlemen, in case you hadn't heard. Yes. Let me just take time out to remind people that on the 8th of April, right here on the Kev Baker Show on TFRlive.com, I have got a certain Mr. David Icke coming on to the show. Yes, we've got 45 minutes with the brain, the mind that is David Icke right here on the Kev Baker Show.
Yourself in, everyone.
And Scott's right. Scott's right, though. If you don't ask, you don't get. And, thanks to TFR, the platform we've got here, all of you people out there, we're going to get Ike finally on the Kev Baker Show. I didn't think he was ever going to come on, Scott. You know that. So that's one I'm sort of looking forward to. I don't know if I've mentioned it many times to you, but yeah, looking forward to that one. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night's show. I'll be back. Same time, same place. Just me again. We'll see what we can rustle up. But until then, folks, wherever you are, make it TFR and dinny touch that dial. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I'd mentioned David Icke.
Are you guys going on with Joe?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he messaged me.
Are you going to go, Scotty?
Yeah, I have to shoot. I haven't even ate yet. Supper never got done.
Right, I'll let you boys go and do your thing then. I'll be listening, Jimmy.
Hey, Kev, are you going to be around in an hour?
Maybe.
All right, I'll try to see if I message. I wanted to talk to you about some.
No probs, man.
I mean, it's no big deal. It's nothing. It's not an emergency or anything. Okay, I got to go. See you guys later.
No problem, boys.
All right, later. Let Joe know I won't be there, man.
Okay.
Later, boys.